Ferguson is, I think, a good example of this. In Ferguson, a lot of the kind of gear that we saw on television that the police had, throughout the crisis there, was not actually military gear. It was stuff, very similar equipment bought from private companies. And what we're seeing now is, some towns, some counties are actually giving back the equipment or trying to give back the military equipment. But they also have, very similar stuff that they're buying from private companies. An example is in Arizona, Sheriff Joe Arpaio kind of made a show of giving some of his gear back, and he put on display all of his kind of the military stuff he had, and then he showed the much kind of newer, more up-to-date stuff that he's buying from companies. And this industry has really, sprung up post 9/11 when Homeland Security start giving grants to local communities for counterterrorism. A lot of the companies I saw, Urban Shield, were actually, started after 9/11. So they give them to this stuff for counterterrorism, but of course they can use it for anything they want, and most of what it's used for is drug raids.
It was actually around 92, 94, there was an attack on the chancellor at his residence, which is on campus. And we realized at the time that we didn't have any resources to deal with that kind of threat when it took place. So, and I think about 15 years before, they had some kind of semblance of a SWAT team. So they regenerated the idea of activating a SWAT team.
That was Eric Tejada of UC Berkeley Special Operations. Most people might be surprised to hear the University of California, Berkeley has a SWAT team. Shane Bauer, could you tell us what kind of operations the team has physically carried out?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is interesting because this scenario, they were doing a kind of high-stakes, hostage rescue. They would later, go on a boat in the bay to kind of dismantle a terrorist IED. They would go into a church where, a kind of pretend militant atheist group is holding church members hostage. But when I ask them what they do day to day, most of what they respond to are muggings of students. The kind of normal police work that, that police departments do. They're kind of going in, fully armed, geared up in this kind of military-style gear, busting into houses. I think another aspect that is interesting about this whole situation with the Homeland Security money is that there's incentive for kind of new equipment. One thing that I saw was a device that attaches to a gun, and it sends out radiation waves that temporarily blind the person it's pointed at for 10 minutes by what the vendor told me was by scrambling their ocular fluid. And that's something that's going to be hitting the market early next year. Well, Urban Shield has been happening for years. It's been going on since the mid-2000s, and in recent years there's been regular protest of it. And this year in particular, Gene Kwan said that Urban Shield will not be allowed to come back to Oakland. Now the county has said yes, they will. So there's kind of a battle between the city and the county right now. When I was at Urban Shield, the protests, something I noticed was that the protests were referencing Ferguson quite a bit. And that was something that just wasn't really talked about on the inside Urban Shield. There wasn't any discussion of Ferguson. But at the same time, I was seeing T-shirts for sale that where you see kind of an image of a gun sight and says, "This is my peace sign." You see kind of this Spartan imagery, very militaristic kind of imagery. That in many ways,
what is this kind of my peace sign? What is it actually showing?
That's a sight of an AR-15, looking kind of down the scope of an AR-15 sight.
Shane,
I think that's.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think something that really was interesting to me about being there was this kind of overlap with the military. Some of these companies that I seen and vendors that I spoke to were from the military. Their companies were actually set up to distribute to the military, and they've since kind of come over to also bringing in police. you know, the Marines were a team competing there. I talked to the Marines after one of their scenarios, and they said that they actually learned from the police. The spokesperson of Urban Shield told me, you know, we should be talking not about militarization of the police, but policization of the military. There's this kind of interesting dynamic now where the Marines are actually learning from the kind of urban SWAT team tactics to bring back and kind of train their people.